So we still wait with bated breath for Japan's decision on whether it's going to cut South Korea from its trade whitelist. Let's get an expert's take on the situation and his thoughts on where this trade spat might end up heading. Joining me in the studio, I'm glad to say, is Dr. Bong Young-shik, Research Fellow at Seoul's Yonsei University. Thank you, as always, for joining us. First things first, the most important question. Do you expect Japan's cabinet to approve removing Seoul from its trade whitelist?
There are a lot of indications that Abe administration is going to go ahead with a decision to remove South Korea from the list, the whitelist of 27 countries. But the announcement is expected to be made at 10 o'clock, but the announcement has not been made as we are speaking of the issue. So there might be some reconsideration by the Japanese government, depending upon the result of the meetings between foreign ministers in Bangkok at the Asian Regional Forum. But it seems like the Japanese government is going to make the decision.
Yeah, we had been hearing that perhaps in around 10 minutes' time there might be some kind of announcement by Japan's chief cabinet secretary, but we'll keep an eye out for that information for you. Now, there are international concerns that this expanding trade crisis between South Korea and Japan, it really could end up forcing some kind of economic decoupling between the two countries that's really held the two countries together when there's been many occasions when they could have really moved far apart. Do you think that is something that people should be concerned about at this point?
Yeah, definitely. It will only not only damage the future economic partnership between South Korea and Japan, and also security cooperation, not only between Japan and South Korea, but also the trilateral security cooperation, including the United States, because the security cooperation between the two governments, South Korea and Japan, has been regarded as the weakest link of the trilateral security cooperation in Northeast Asia. So this will be a big blow to the U.S. plan to maintain the regional stability in Northeast Asia. The message is very symbolic and clear that the Abe administration has revised its three principles about export control by Japan in recent years. One, the country importing sensitive materials from Japan should not be under the United Nations Security Council resolutions. And two, the decision about the export control by Japan will be about the international peace and the national security of Japan. There must be a clear evidence that allowing those countries to import sensitive materials from Japan will make clear contributions to those two goals, international peace and national security of Japan. And third one is that the country importing materials and technology from Japan will not transfer those to third countries without official and explicit consent by Japan. I think the second and third principles are applied to the decision by Abe administrations to potentially remove South Korea from the list of 27 countries on the whitelist.
Right, there's some speculation that South Korea has a degree of leverage in this situation. We heard from the head of South Korea's National Intelligence Service. He was speaking at the National Assembly on Thursday. His feelings is that it wouldn't be wise for South Korea to potentially threaten to pull out of the intel sharing pact that
you mean GSOMIA?
No, that South Korea has with Japan, and the deadline for that renewal comes up this month. Do you see potentially the South Korean government going that far to pull out of that pact if Japan goes ahead with this removal from the whitelist today?
Considering the most recent remark by Foreign Minister of South Korea, Madam Kang Kyung-hwa, then it is highly likely for the Moon Jae-in government of South Korea to pull out of the annual renewal of GSOMIA, General Security of Military Information Agreement with the United States and Japan. But I'm afraid they will be self-defeating because GSOMIA not only benefits United States and Japan, but also it renders tremendous benefits to South Korea in dealing with North Korea's military threat and missile and nuclear test. We have witnessed North Korea conducting 3 short-range missile tests and artilleries in the span of less than 2 weeks. 3 provocations. So in the absence of GSOMIA, then the South Korean government cannot really justify its claim that the taking of South Korea from the list of the whitelist will greatly damage the regional security cooperation among United States, Japan, and South Korea. Then the blame will be on South Korea, not on Japan, that South Korea's action to pull herself out of the GSOMIA greatly undermines the security coordination and cooperation among 3 countries in response to North Korea. So I don't know whether South Korean government is ready to take such an action, which potentially makes South Korea as most responsible for decrease of security cooperation, not Japan.
But surely there has to be some kind of reaction from South Korea to this, should it happen
Well,
today.
I understand the pressure
the
pressure on the Moon Jae-in government of South Korea to do something,
Right.
something really strong in response to the potential decision by Abe administration. But you have to be really objective and cool-headed in terms of making the decision when it comes to your own national interest and security. You have to stay with your own rhetorics and argument that Japan's export control only undermines security cooperation among United States and Japan and South Korea. That has been one of the main arguments rendered by the Moon Jae-in government of South Korea in response to the threat of removing South Korea from the whitelist. But what if South Korea walks away from GSOMIA? Then even the United States would regard that as a lack of support and commitment to high level of security coordination among all 3 countries.
Yeah.
Then South Korean government may do something that would undermine its own claim.
Right. Well, that's certainly something that the South Korean government is thinking about very, very carefully, I'm sure. We've been reporting for a couple of weeks now how South Koreans are expanding this boycott of everything Japanese. We've seen sales of Japanese cars, beer and other products, and South Koreans cancelling their trips to Japan as a result of these trade curbs and whatnot. Do you think there would be a widening boycott should Tokyo take South Korea off this whitelist? And do you think this kind of economic pressure being put on Japan by the South Korean public could possibly prompt Japan to rethink its current position?
I think there is a very serious recognition of the blowback of the decision in terms of damaging the economic cooperation between the 2 countries inside Japan. But at the same time, I think the situation is beyond the hands of individual citizens and corporations. I think the solution lies in the hands of the top leaderships on both sides. Everyone on both sides knows that this is not about national security of Japan. This is not about export control. This is about different opinions on interpreting the 1965 normalization agreement between the 2 countries, especially whether the individual rights to claim against Japanese individual and corporations are still alive or has been nullified by signing of the 1965 agreement. So in the absence of any agreement at the level of top leaderships on both sides, I don't think the economic measures and retaliations, including the anti-Japanese product movements among South Korean producers and consumers, would not really bring an end to this current situation.
Yeah,
this is basically political situation.
Yeah, I think you got to the very heart of it there. It all comes down to the interpretation of that 1965 treaty, both sides having very different views on that. Just one thing before we move on. The US role, because Mike Pompeo is going to meet separately with the foreign ministers of South Korea and Japan today, and then together with them. how much role do you think the US is going to play? Do you think Washington now realizes the seriousness of this situation and really is going to start putting pressure on both sides to reach some kind of compromise?
I don't think the United States' role as an honest broker is limited because it has been a long-standing position of the United States not to get involved between any countries when it's about territorial disputes or historical issues. And this is one of those issues that the United States is afraid of getting involved. And if the United States get involved, it would open the floodgate. Then many other historical and territorial issues would invite the United States to be the mediator or honest broker. So I don't think the United States is ready to open the floodgate because of the simply because this is a very serious matter for current security cooperation.
Right. So you don't think that the effect on the global supply chain of semiconductors to U.S. firms, that isn't a consideration?
Well, the U.S. ambassador to South Korea already gave us a very clear answer to that question, that the point when the United States government will seriously consider getting involved in this spat between South Korea and Japan will be when the situation will actually hurt the U.S. corporation and consumers.
Okay. I'm just hearing in my ear that we just have some news coming in on what we've just been talking about. Japan has decided to remove South Korea from its list of trusted trading partners in a meeting held just moments ago. I believe it started at 10 a.m. Korea time, same time in Korea and Japan. The Japanese cabinet decided to drop South Korea from its whitelist of 27 countries given preferential treatment in trade procedures. This takes this dispute to the next level. Now, the decision means Japanese exporters will need individual authorization rather than fast-track approval for exports of around 1,120 dual-use items to South Korea. So let's go back to Dr. Bong Young-shik from Seoul's Yonsei University, who's still with us. So what's your reaction to that decision?
Well, this is a very sad day for many people. Many people would have a very heavy heart watching this news. It reminds me of the line in the movie Margin Call, a movie about the subprime mortgage crisis of the United States in 2008.
Yeah.
The investor, played by actor Mr. Kevin Spacey, said that, remember this day, remember this day. But there's a hope because although the cabinet of the Abe administration made this decision to remove South Korea from the whitelist, but we still have 3 weeks for that decision to be implemented. So we still have a reasonable amount of time for both countries to sit together to come up with a solution satisfactory to both sides. But once again, the heart of the issue is not security, economics, trade, technology, and whatnot. It is about how to come to the common terms about the interpretation of 1965 normalization between South Korea and Japan. Unless there will be political agreement on that issue, then Japan will continue to regard South Korea not a country that Japan can fully trust, including export of the materials for dual uses. So the situation will not be fundamentally changed unless there will be political decision on this historical issue.
So, I mean, many people saw this coming. There were reports filtering out over the past couple of days saying this was a done deal, essentially. They were going to approve it. Japanese media outlets were saying that that was certainly going to be the case. The South Korean government's response now then, given what you're saying about the sensitive nature of this issue, do you think that they're going to take their time and formulate a response, or do you think we're going to hear something from them very soon?
I think there will be a response from the Blue House, President's Office of South Korea, very soon. Sometime in this afternoon, the Moon Jae-in government is expected to make the announcement in response to this decision by Abe administration of Japan. But we have to keep an eye on actual content of the response from South Korean government. Depending upon the content of the announcement by the South Korean government, I guess the atmosphere will be decided whether in favor of reasonable and productive diplomatic negotiations, or it'll be just a headbutting confrontation to be continued. So we have to wait and see. But we have two timelines. One is the short-term results created from this announcement by the Japanese government. I think it will be strongly influenced by negative emotions, especially anti-Japan sentiment among South Korean public.
Yeah.
But we also have a different timetable, which is a long-term, that if South Korean economy will go down significantly because of the after effect of this decision, especially the semiconductor industry, then we are going to, since we are going to have the National Assembly election in the next April, if the economic situations go down, then South Korean public's opinion toward the South Korean government's very hardline policy toward the Abe administration may be quickly shifting. So there is a political aspect of the Moon Jae-in government of South Korea's response to Abe administration's decision.
Do you think this is the most challenging point of the Moon Jae-in administration so far, since he's been in power?
I think so. And he's now passing the midpoint of his presidency, which is for 5 years. But if I may try to maintain the positive outlook on this.
We're just watching a video of the spokesman from Japan telling everyone about Tokyo's decision to remove South Korea from the whitelist. And as we can see on the screen there, South Korea is going to prepare countermeasures against those things. So potentially, could this be a defining point of the President Moon's administration, how he deals with this now?
Right. We have to pay attention what kind of countermeasures will be taken by the Moon Jae-in government of South Korea. It may affect the next round of the engagement or absence of engagement between South Korea and Japan.
Well, there was never that much engagement anyway. But,
right.
Yeah.
Well, I like to cite the line from movie Godfather, Part 3. Michael Corleone tells his successor that do not hate your enemy. Do not hate your enemy, because it affects your judgment.
Yeah.
I think we have to get out of the emotional clashes in order to have cool-headed approaches to the issue. Otherwise, then the domestic political consideration will prevail over diplomatic search for solution.
Okay, just really, really quickly, because we're running out of time, I just wanted to get, in terms of the crises that South Korea's economy has faced over the years, how do you think this moment right now ranks?
Well, we have an impact of the Asian financial crisis in the 1990s,
Yeah.
but I don't think the situation is as bad as that economic crisis many years ago. And we still have a window of 3 weeks to patch the current situation if there will be political will.
Okay, wonderful. Now, Professor Bong Young-shik, we appreciate your insights and thank you for coming in and sharing them with us today.
My pleasure.